pretty much everybody now agrees this is a problem, and it's not just a problem we have in this country, it's a problem throughout the Western world. But it just seems that every time you get a new policy, it's got that air of knee-jerk, it's got that air of panic policy, sort of written on your underpants and in a sort of moment of, God, what are we going to do next? And I do want, I like James Cleverly's sort of general demeanour and him saying it's got to be fair, it's got to be consistent, but it's also got to be long-term. And what we need is a highly skilled workforce of Indigenous employees, and you can't get that overnight. That is why we keep importing cheap labour. And I approve of them scrapping the shortage occupation list, which enabled people to say, well, we can't find Brits to do these jobs, so we'll offer the salaries on 20%. And funny enough, that was one of the things that Keir Starmer was writing about in the Telegraph. We're going to talk about that later. So there's a bit of me that thinks too little, too late. I'm not that impressed.
Well, you can't say enough is enough, like you've been in opposition for 10 years. That's the first point. These guys have been there for 13 or whatever it is, something like that.
But what would they say if they didn't say enough?
13 years.
13 years. So,
but 7 without me, so
that's true.
That's the problem.
Well, that's where it all went wrong. And this could be the greatest backfiring since Ed walked out of Westminster
since
all
I was
those years
booted
ago.
out by Theresa May.
No, because the reason is because notionally I understand what he's trying to do. I quite like Cleverly. He's a bright guy. I think he brings something to the job, and he's only been there about half an hour, to be fair. However, the idea that you're going to somehow instantly replace all of those people that you are taking the visas away from and people who can't bring their I understand it. If you're studying geography at Bromley Polytechnic, the idea you come with your nan and granddad has always been a bit weird. I know that's unusual, but you take the point. However, in the jobs like care sector, where you don't earn $38,000 a year, in areas of IT even, where you might not even earn that kind of money, what's going to happen in the interim period while we wait for Indigenous people to suddenly fill those roles?
Well, cue trolling from Bromley Polytechnic on X to Ian Collins. The students of Bromley Polytechnic are revolting against you. There is a lot to unpack here. I mean, I think what Daisy says when you say enough is enough, what you mean is people want controlled immigration. They want to know that the government is in control of its borders. And enough is enough goes with the other thing you were saying, which is policy made on the hoof. So suddenly, this is the government. They knew what the immigration figures were going to be. They would have known a few months beforehand. They knew that they were likely to lose the Rwandan judgment. They know that they've put a lot of eggs in the Rwandan basket, and it's not going to solve their problem, and it's certainly not going to solve it before the election. Immigration is a very difficult subject because at both ends of the spectrum, you've got good things about immigration. You've got people coming here to do jobs that, frankly, the indigenous population, as we're calling them, don't necessarily want to do in care homes. But one of the reasons that Britain is the leading tech economy in Europe is because you could set up a company here and draw on this incredible expertise from all around the world. So there's got to be a control on numbers. People have to know that people aren't taking the mickey out of the system. People aren't coming here, as it were, to get a free ride. But you do need some level of immigration. The great irony, of course, is that everyone voted for Brexit, assuming the numbers of immigration would go down, and they've gone through the roof, and it's gone through the roof under the watch of a Brexit government that made these promises. And that's why I think they'll be doubly punished at the polls for not controlling immigration, but also for promising that all their changes would.
Well, Cleverly makes the point that, small boats are, we're getting to grips with small boats. I would suggest the reason that small boats have maybe tapered off a little bit is because it's about -10 outside and it's absolutely freezing cold. So he can't claim that they're getting anywhere on small boats. And that was one of Rishi Sunak's key pledges, which he's kind of watered down to kind of a promise or like an aspiration, basically. But, you can't keep ignoring the democratic will of the people, which is repeatedly, and whether you call it xenophobic or racist or whatever you call it, as Daisy says, repeatedly people have voted, people have asked for us to get control of immigration in this country. We have to go back to basics until we start paying those jobs, the care sector, the, nannying sector, the kind of these low skilled, they're not low skilled at all, until we start paying the really important but undervalued professions properly. British young people, young teenagers are not going to go into them. They're not going to want to wipe the bottoms of older people. They're not going to want to hold the hands of old people as they die in care homes. These incredibly important, compassionate jobs, we just pay them nothing.